Hello, everyone, and welcome to South High School Student Theater production of Our Town.
As we'd like to remind you, as a gentle reminder that is, no flash photography.
And please take this time to silence and turn off your cell phones.
And remember, no smoking on DPS property.
Enjoy the show.
The name of this play is Our Town. It was written by Thornton Wilder, produced and directed by South High Student Theater. In it, you will see Miss Welch, Miss Moore, Miss Yao, and Mr. Tyan, Mr. Roy, Mr. Figueroa, and many others. The name of the town is Grover's Corners, New Hampshire, just across the Massachusetts line. Latitude, 42 degrees, 40 minutes. Longitude, 70 degrees, 37 minutes. The first act shows a day in our town. The day is May 7th, 1901. The time is just before dawn. The skies are beginning to show some streaks of light over in the east there, behind our mountain. The morning star always gets wonderful bright the minute before it has to go, doesn't it? Well, I better show you how our town lies. Up here is Main Street. Way back there is the railway station. Tracks go that way. Polish towns across the tracks and some Canuck families. Over there is the Congregational Church. Across the street's the Presbyterian. Methodist and Unitarian over there. Baptist is down in the hollow by the river. Catholic Church is over beyond the tracks. Right here is our town hall and post office combined. Jail's in the basement. William Jennings Bryan once made a speech from these very steps here. Along here is a row of stores. Horse blocks and hitching posts in front of each of them. First car is going to come along in about 5 years. Belonged to Banker Cartwright, our richest citizen. He lives in the big white house up on the hill. Right here is Mr. Morgan's drugstore and the grocery store. Most everybody in town managed to look into those two stores once a day. Public school's over yonder. High school still farther over. 9:15 mornings, noon times, and 3 o'clock afternoons. The whole town can hear the yelling and screaming from those schoolyards. This is our doctor's house, Doc Gibbs. And this is his back door. There's some scenery for those who think they have to have scenery. And this is Mrs. Gibbs' garden. Corn, peas, beans, hollyhocks, heliotrope, and a lot of burdock. In those days, our newspaper come out twice a week, the Grover's Corner Sentinel. And this is Editor Webb's house. And this is Mrs. Webb's garden. Just like Mrs. Gibbs, only it's got a lot of sunflowers, too. And over here is a big butternut tree. Nice town, you know what I mean. Nobody very remarkable ever come out of it, as far as we know. The earliest tombstones in the cemetery up on our mountain say 1670, 1680. They're Grovers and Cartwrights and Gibbses and Herseys. Same names as are around here now. Well, as I said, it's just before dawn. The only lights on in town are in a cottage over by the tracks, where a Polish mother's just had twins. And in the Joe Crowell house, where Joe Jr. is getting up so as to deliver the paper. And in the depot, where Shorty Hawkins has just flagged the 5:45 for Boston. Naturally, out in the country, there have been lights on for some time, what with milkins and so on. But town people sleep late, so another day's begun. There's Doc Gibbs coming down Main Street now, coming back from that baby case. And here's his wife, Mrs. Gibbs, come down to make breakfast. Doc Gibbs died in 1930. The new hospital's named after him. Mrs. Gibbs died first. She went out to visit her daughter, who married an insurance man in Canton, Ohio, and died there. Pneumonia. But her body was brought back here. She's up in the cemetery there now, in with a whole mess of Gibbses and Herseys. She was Julia Hersey before she married Doc Gibbs in the Congregational Church over there. In our town, we like to know the facts about everybody. And here's Mrs. Webb, come down to get her breakfast, too. There's Doc Gibbs. Got that call at 1:30 this morning. And here comes Joe Crowell Jr., delivering Mr. Webb's Sentinel.
Good morning, Dr. Gibbs.
Morning, Joe.
Somebody been sick, Doc?
No, just some twins born over in Polish Town.
Would you like your paper now?
Yeah, I'll take it. Anything serious going on in the world since Wednesday?
Yes, sir. My school teacher, Mrs. Foster's getting married to a fellow over in Concord.
I declare. And how do you boys feel about that?
Well, of course, it's none of my business. But if a person starts out to be a teacher, I think they ought to stay one.
How's your knee, Joe?
Fine. Never think about it at all. Only like you said, it tells me when it's going to rain.
What's it telling you today? Gonna rain?
No, sir.
Knee ever make a mistake?
No, sir.
Sure?
Yes, sir.
I want to tell you something about that boy, Joe Crowell there. Joe was awful bright. Graduated from high school here. Head of his class. So he got a scholarship to Massachusetts Tech. Graduated head of his class there, too. It was all wrote up in the Boston papers at the time. Gonna be a great engineer, Joe was. The war broke out and he died in France. All that education for nothing.
Get up, Bessie. What's the matter with you today?
And here comes Hattie Newsom, delivering the milk.
Morning, Doc.
Morning, Hattie.
Somebody sick?
No, just some twins born over at Miss Goroslowski's.
Twins, eh? This town's getting bigger every year.
Gonna rain today, Hattie.
No, fine day. That'll burn through. Come on, Bessie.
Oh, hello, Bessie. How old is she, Hattie?
Going on 17. Bessie's all mixed up about the route ever since the Lockharts stopped taking their quart of milk every day. She wants to leave him a quart just the same. Keeps scolding me the whole trip.
Good morning, Hattie.
Morning, Mrs. Gibbs. Doc's just outside.
Izzy, seems like you're late today.
Yep, something wrong with the separator. Don't know what it was. Doc?
Hattie?
Everything all right, Frank?
Yes, I declare, easy as kittens.
Bacon will be ready in a minute. Sit down, drink your coffee. Can catch a couple hours sleep this morning, can't you?
Huh. Miss Wentworth is coming at 11. I guess I know what it's about, too. Her stomach ain't where it ought to be.
All told, you won't get more than 3 hours sleep. Frank Gibbs, I don't know what's going on to become of you. I do wish I could get you to go away someplace and take a rest. Think it would do you good.
Emily, time to get up. Wally, 7 o'clock.
I declare, you've got to speak to that boy, George. Seems to me something's come over him lately. Can't even get him to cut me some wood.
Is he sassy to you?
No, he just whines. Baseball, that's all he thinks about. George, Rebecca, you'll be late for school. George!
George, look sharp.
Yes, Pa?
Don't you hear your mother calling you? I guess I'll go upstairs and catch 40 winks.
Come along, children. You'll be late for school. Wally, wash yourself good or I'll come do it myself.
Ma, what dress shall I wear?
Don't make a noise. Your father's been out all night. He needs his rest. I washed and ironed that blue gingham for you special.
Ma, I hate that dress.
Now, Rebecca, you always look very nice.
Every day I go to school dressed like a sick turkey.
Oh, hush up with you.
Ma, George is throwing soap at me.
I'll come and slap the both of you, that's what I'll do.
There's a factory in our town, too. Hear it? Makes blankets. The Cartwrights own it, and it brung them a fortune.
Children, now I won't have it. Breakfast is just as good as any other meal, and I won't have you gobbling like wolves. It'll stunt your growth, that's a fact. Put away your book, Wally.
Ma, by 10 o'clock I gotta know all about Canada.
You know the rules as well as I do. No books at the table. As for me, I'd rather have my children healthy than bright.
Well, I'm both, Mama. You know I am. I'm the brightest girl in school for my age. I have a wonderful memory.
Eat your breakfast.
I'm bright too, when I'm looking at my stamp collection.
I'll speak to your father about it when he's rested. Seems to me 25 cents enough for a boy your age. Don't know what you find to spend it on.
Oh, Ma. I got a lot of things to buy.
Strawberry phosphates, that's what you spend it on.
I don't see how Rebecca comes to have so much money. She has more than $1.
I've been saving it up gradual.
Well, honey, I think it's okay to spend it every now and then.
Mama, do you know what I love most in the world? Do you? Money.
Eat your breakfast.
Oh, that's the bell. We gotta go.
Yeah, I'm not hungry anymore,
Thank you
Mama.
for breakfast. Come on, Wally.
Now walk fast, but you don't have to run. Wally, pull up your pants at the knee. Stand up straight, Emily.
Tell Miss Foster I send her my best congratulations. Can you remember that?
Yes, Ma.
You look real nice, Rebecca. Pick up your feet.
Goodbye.
Bye, Mama.
Bye.
Here, chick, 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 chick. Here, chick, 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 chick. Here, chick, 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 chick. No, not you. Go away with you. Fight, fight, fight. That's all you do. Here, chick, 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 chick. Now, you don't belong to me. Where'd you come from? Here. Nobody's gonna hurt you. Here, chick, 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 chick. Good morning, Myrtle. How's your cold?
Well, I still get that tickling feeling in my throat. I told Charles I don't know as how I'd go to choir practice tonight. Wouldn't be any use.
Have you tried singing over your voice?
Yes, but somehow I can't do that and still stay on the key. While I'm resting up, I thought I'd string some of these beans.
Let me help you. Beans have been good this year.
I've decided to put up 40 quarts if it kills me. The children say they hate 'em, but I notice they're able to get them down all winter.
Now, Myrtle, I've got to tell you something, because if I don't tell somebody, I'll burst.
Why, Julia Gibbs.
Did one of those secondhand furniture men from Boston come and see you the other day?
No?
Well, he called on me. First, I thought he was a patient wanting to see Dr. Gibbs, and he wormed his way into my parlor in Myrtle Webb. He offered me $350 for Grandmother Wentworth's high boy as I'm sitting here.
Why, Julia Gibbs.
He did. That old thing, it was so big I almost gave it away to Cousin Hester Wilcox.
Well, you're going to take it, aren't you?
I don't know.
You don't know? $350? What's come over you?
Well, if I could get the doctor to take the money and go away someplace on a real trip, I'd sell it like that. You know, Myrtle, it's always been the dream of my life to see Paris, France. It's silly, I suppose, but I was promising myself that if I ever got the chance.
How does the doctor feel about it?
Well, I beat around the bush a little and said that if I got the legacy, that's the way I put it, I'd make him take me somewhere.
What did he say?
You know how he is. I haven't heard a serious word out of him since I've known him. No, he said it might make him discontented with Grover's Corners to go tracing about Europe. Better let well enough alone, he says. Every 2 years we take a trip up to the battlefield of the Civil War, and that's enough treat for anybody, he says.
Well, Mr. Webb just admires the way Dr. Gibbs knows everything about the Civil War. Mr. Webb's a good mind to move over to the Civil War from Napoleon. Only Dr. Gibbs, being one of the greatest experts in the country, just makes him despair.
It's a fact. The doctor's never as happy as when he's at Antietam or Gettysburg. The time I've paced over those hills, Myrtle, stopping at every bush, like we were gonna buy it.
Well, if that second-hand furniture man is really serious about buying it, Julia, you sell it. Then you'll get to see Paris all right. Just keep dropping hints from time to time. That's how I got to see the Atlantic Ocean, you know.
Oh, I'm sorry I mentioned it. Only seems to me that once before you die, you ought to see a country where they don't talk in English and don't even want to.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you very much. Now, we're going to skip a few hours. But first, we want a little more information about the town. Kind of a scientific account, you might say. So I've asked Professor Willard of our state university to sketch in a few details of our past history here. Is Professor Willard here? May I introduce Professor Willard of our state university? A few brief notes. Thank you, Professor. Unfortunately, our time is limited.
Grover's Corners. Let me see. Grover's Corners lies on the old Pleistocene granite of the Appalachian Range. I may say it's some of the oldest land in the world. We're very proud of that. A shelf of Devonian basalt crosses it with vestiges of Mesozoic shale and some sandstone outcroppings. But that's all more recent, 200, 300 million years ago. Some highly interesting fossils have been found. I must say, unique fossils. 2 miles out of town, in Silas Peckham's cow pasture. They can be seen at our university at any time. That is, at any reasonable time. Shall I read Professor Gruber's notes on the meteorological data, mean precipitation, etc.?
Afraid we won't have time for that, Professor. We might have a few words on the history of man here.
Yes. Anthropological data, early Native American stock, Cotachi tribes. No evidence for the 10th century of this era. Now, entirely disappeared. Possible traces in 3 families. Migration toward the end of the 17th century of the English brachiocephalic blue-eyed stock. Since then, some Slav and Mediterranean.
And the population, Professor Willard?
Within the town limits, 2,640.
Just a moment, Professor.
Oh, yes, indeed. The population at the moment is 2,642. The postal district brings in 507 more, bringing the total to 3,149. Mortality and birth rates constant. By McPherson's gauge, 6.032.
Thank you very much, Professor. We're all very much obliged to you, I'm sure.
Not at all, ma'am, not at all.
Right this way, Professor, and thank you again. Now, the Political and Social Report. Editor Webb. Mr. Webb.
He'll be down in a minute. He just cut his hand while eating an apple.
Thank you, Mrs. Webb.
Charles, everybody's waiting.
Mr. Webb is publisher and editor of the Grover's Corner Sentinel. That's our local paper, you know.
Well, I don't have to tell you that we're run here by a board of selectmen. All males voting at the age of 21, women vote indirect. We're a lower middle class sprinkling of professional men, 10% being illiterate laborers. Politically, we're 86% Republicans, 6% Democrats, 4% Socialists, rest indifferent. Religiously, we're 85% Protestants and 12% Catholics. Rest is indifferent.
Have you any comments, Mr. Webb?
Very ordinary town, if you ask me. Little better behaved than most. Probably a lot duller. But our young people here seem to like it well enough. 90% of them graduating from high school, settling down right here to live, even after when they've been away to college.
Now, is there anyone in the audience who'd like to ask Mr. Webb anything about the town?
Well, ma'am, wouldn't know what you call much. Saturday nights, the farm hands meet down in Ellie Greenhoe's stable and holler some. We've got one or two town drunks, but they're always having remorses every time an evangelist comes to town. No, ma'am, I'd say look at any regular thing in the home here, except in the medicine chest, which is right good for snake's bite, you know? Always was.
Come forward, will you, where we can all hear you? What were you saying?
Oh, yes. Everybody is something terrible. Seems like they spend most of their time talking about who's rich and who's poor.
Then why don't they do something about it?
Well, I don't know. I guess we're all hunting like everybody else for the way the diligent and sensible can rise to the top, the lazy and quarrelsome can sink to the bottom. But it ain't easy to find. Meanwhile, we do all we can to help those that can't help themselves, and those that can we leave alone. Are there any other questions?
Oh, Mr. Webb, is there any culture or love of beauty in Grover's Corners?
Well, ma'am, there ain't much. Not in the sense you mean. Come to think of it, there's some girls that play the piano at high school commencement, but they ain't happy about it. No, ma'am, there ain't much. But maybe this is the place to tell you that we've got a lot of pleasures of a kind here. You know, we like the sun coming up over the mountain in the morning, and we all notice a great deal about the birds. Pay a lot of attention to them. We watch the change of the seasons, yes, everybody knows about them, but it's those other things. You're right, ma'am, there ain't much with Robinson's Crusoe and the Bible and Handel's Largo. Oh, and with Whistler's Mother. That's just about as far as we go.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Now we'll get back to the town. It's early afternoon. All 2,642 have had their dinner, and all the dishes have been washed. There's an early afternoon calm in our town, a buzzing and a humming from the school buildings. Only a few buggies on Main Street, the horses dozing at the hitching posts. You all remember what it's like. Doc Gibbs is in his office, tapping people and making them say, ah. Mr. Webb is mowing his lawn over there. 1 man in 10 thinks it's a privilege to push his own lawnmower. No, sir, it's later than I thought. There are the children coming home from school already.
I can't, Louise. I've got to go home and help my mother. I promised.
Emily, walk simply. What do you think you are today?
Papa, you're terrible. One minute you tell me to stand up straight, and the next minute you call me names. I just don't listen to you.
Oh, golly. Never got a kiss from such a great lady before.
Oh, excuse me, Mrs. Forrest.
Go out and play in the field, young man. You got no business playing baseball on Main Street.
Awfully sorry, Mrs. Forrest. Hello, Emily.
Hello.
You made a fine speech in class today.
Well, I was really ready to make a speech about the Monroe Doctrine, but at the last minute, Miss Corcoran made me talk about the Louisiana Purchase instead. I worked an awful long time on both of them.
Gee, Emily, it's funny. From my window up there, I can just see your headlights when you're doing homework over in your room.
Why, can you?
You certainly do stick to it, Emily. I don't see how you can sit still that long. I guess you like school.
Well, I always feel like it's something you have to go through.
Yeah,
I don't mind it, really. It passes the time.
yeah. Emily, what do you think? We might work out a kind of telegraph from your window to mine, and you can maybe give me a hint or two on one of those algebra problems. I don't mean the answers, Emily. Of course not. Just a little hint.
Oh, I think hints are allowed. So if you get stuck, George, you whistle to me, and I'll give you some hints.
You're just naturally bright, I guess, Emily.
I figure that it's just the way a person's born.
Yeah, but Emily, you see, I want to be a farmer, and my Uncle Luke, well, I was talking to him the other day, and he was saying that whenever I'm ready, I can come over and I can work on his farm, and if I'm any good, I can just kind of gradually have it.
You mean the house and everything?
Yeah.
Huh.
Well, I better be getting out to the baseball field. Thanks for the talk, Emily. Hello, Mrs. Webb.
Good afternoon, George.
So long, Emily.
So long, George.
Emily, why don't you come over here and help me string these beans? George Gibbs let himself have a real conversation, now didn't he? Why, he's growing up. How old would George be?
I don't know.
He must be almost 16.
Mama, I made a speech in class today, and I was very good.
You must recite it to your father at supper. What was it about?
The Louisiana Purchase. Oh, it was like silk off a spool. I'm going to make speeches my whole life. Mama, are these big enough?
Try and make them a little bigger if you can.
Mama, will you answer me a question serious?
Seriously, dear, not serious.
Seriously, will you?
Of course I will.
Mama, am I good looking?
Why, yes, of course you are. Both my children have good features. I'd be ashamed if they hadn't.
Oh, Mama, that's not what I mean. Well, what I mean is, am I pretty?
Emily, I've already told you, yes. Now enough of that. You have a nice, young, pretty face. I've never heard of such foolishness.
Oh, Mama, you never tell us the truth about anything.
I am telling you the truth.
Mama, were you pretty?
Yes, I was, if I do say it. I was the prettiest girl in town, next to Mamie Cartwright.
But, Mama, you've got to say something about me. Well, am I pretty enough to get people or, to get somebody interested in me?
Emily, you make me tired. Now stop it. You're pretty enough for all normal purposes. Now come along now and bring that bowl with you.
Oh, Mama, you're no help at all.
Thank you, that'll do. Now we'll have to interrupt again here. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Mrs. Webb. Now, there's a few more things we want to explore about this town. I think this is a good time to tell you that the Cartwright interests have just begun building a new bank in Grover's Corners. Had to go to Vermont for the marble, sorry to say. And they've asked a friend of mine what they should put in the cornerstone for people to dig up 1,000 years from now. Of course, they're putting in a copy of the New York Times and a copy of Mr. Webb's Sentinel. We're awfully interested in this because some scientific fellas have found a way of painting all that reading matter with a glue, a silicate glue, that'll make it keep 1,000, 2,000 years. We're putting in a Bible and the Constitution of the United States and a copy of William Shakespeare's plays. What do you say, folks? What do you think? Babylon once had 2 million people in it. And all we know about them is the names of the kings and some copies of weak contracts and contracts for the sale of slaves. Yet every night, all those families sat down to supper, and the father came home from his work, and the smoke went up the chimney. Same as here. And even in Greece and Rome, all we know about the real lives of those people is what we can piece together from the joking poems and comedies they wrote for the theater back then. So I'm going to have a copy of this play here put in the cornerstone. And the people 1,000 years from now will know a few simple facts about us, more than the Treaty of Versailles and the Lindbergh flight. So, people 1,000 years from now, this is the way we were, in the provinces north of New York, at the beginning of the 20th century. This is the way we were. In our growing up, and in our marrying, and in our living, and in our dying.
Good to see you, everybody. Good evening. Let's begin with Blessed Be the Tie That Binds.
Blessed be the tie that binds our hearts in Christian love, the fellowship of kindred minds is like to that above.
Well, a great deal of time's gone by. It's evening. You can hear choir practice going on in the Congregational Church. The children are at home doing their schoolwork. The day's running down like a tired clock.
We share our mutual woes, our mutual burdens bear, and often for each other flows a sympathizing tear.
All right, everybody. Music come into the world to give pleasure.
Blessed be the
Softer.
that binds.
Softer! Get it out of your heads that music's only good when it's loud. You leave loudness to the Methodists. You couldn't beat them even if you tried. Now again, tenors.
Emily.
Hello.
Hello.
I can't work at all. Isn't the moonlight just terrible?
Emily, did you get the answer to the third problem?
Which?
The third.
Why, yes, George, that's the easiest of them all.
I don't see it, Emily. Can you give me a little hint?
I'll tell you one thing. The answer's in yards.
In yards? How do you mean?
In square yards.
Oh, in square yards.
Yes, George, don't you see?
Yeah.
In square yards of wallpaper.
Oh, wallpaper. Thanks, Emily.
You're welcome. My, isn't the moonlight terrible? And choir practice going on. I think if you hold your breath, you can hear the train all the way to Kentucky. Hear it?
What do you know?
Well, I guess I better go and try to get back to work now.
Thanks, Emily. Good night.
Good night, George.
All right, now before I forget, how many of you will be able to make it to Ted's wedding next Tuesday? Show your hands. All right, that'll be nice. We'll do the same music we did for Jane Trowbridge's last month. This time we'll do Art Thou Weary, Art Thou Languid. It's a question, ladies and gentlemen. Make it talk.
Now, George, can you come down a minute?
Yes, Pa.
George, make yourself comfortable. I'll only keep you a minute. George, how old are you?
I'm 16. going on 17.
And what did you want to do after school's over?
Why, you know, Pa. I want to be a farmer on Uncle Luke's farm.
And you'll be willing to get up early and milk and feed the stock, and you'll be able to hoe and hay all day.
Sure I will. What's this about, Pa?
Well, while I was in my office today, I heard a funny sound. And do you know what it was? It was your mother chopping wood. There you see your mother, getting up early, cooking all our meals, washing and ironing all day, and still she has to go out back and chop wood. I suppose she just got tired of asking you, decided it was easier to do it herself. And there you are, and you eat her meals, and you put on the clothes she keeps nice for you, and you run off and play baseball like she's some hired girl we keep around the house, but one we don't like very much. See, I knew all I had to do was call your attention to it. Here's a handkerchief, son. I decided to raise your spending money 25 cents a week. Not, of course, for chopping wood for your mother, because that is a present you give her. But because you're getting older, and I imagine there are things you must find to do with them.
Thanks, Pa.
Your payday is tomorrow. You can count on it. I bet Rebecca will feel like she ought to have some more, too. I wonder where your mother could be. Choir practice was never this late.
It's only 8:30, Pa.
I don't know why she's in that old choir anyway. She hasn't any more voice than an old crow, traipsing around the streets at this hour at night. Don't you think it's time you retire?
Yes, Pa.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night, Mr. Simpson.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Oh, good night. Good night, dear.
Good night, Martha. Good night, Mr. Foster.
I'll make sure to tell Mr. Webb. I know he'll want to put it in the paper.
Good night, Irma.
Ma, it's late. Real nice choir practice, wasn't it? Myrtle Webb, would you look at that moon? Potato weather for sure.
Naturally, I didn't want to say a word about it in front of those others, but now we're alone. Really, it's the worst scandal ever was in this town.
What?
Simon Stimson.
Now, Luella.
But, Julia, to have the organist of a church drink and drunk year after year, you know he was drunk tonight.
Now, Luella, we all know about Simon Stimson, and we all know about the troubles he's been through. And Dr. Ferguson knows too. So if Dr. Ferguson chooses to keep him in his position year after year, the rest we can do is just not to notice it.
Not to notice it, but it's getting worse.
No, it isn't, Luella. It's getting better. I've been in that choir twice as long as you have, so I ought to know. My, I hate to go to bed on a night like this. Those children will be up till all hours. I'd better hurry. Good night, Luella.
Good night.
Can you get home safe, Luella?
It's as bright as day. I can see Mr. Sum scowling at the window now. You'd think we'd been to a dance the way the menfolk carry on. Good night,
doll. Well, we had a real nice time.
You're late enough.
Why, Frank, it ain't any later than usual.
You stopping at the corner to gossip with a lot of hens.
Now, Frank, don't be grouchy. Come out and smell the heliotrope in the moonlight. Now, isn't that wonderful? What did you do all the time I was away?
I read, as usual. What were the girls gossiping about tonight?
Well, believe me, Frank, there is something to gossip about.
Simon Stimson far gone, was he?
Worst I'd ever seen him. How'd that end, Frank?
Well, I suppose I know more about Simon Stimson and his troubles than anybody else in this town. Some people just ain't made for small town life. How that'll end, I don't know. But there's nothing we can do but just not to notice it. Come, get in.
No, Frank, I'm worried about you.
Now, what are you worried about?
Well, I think it's my duty to make plans for you to get a real rest and change. And if I get the legacy, well, I'm going to insist on it.
Now, Julia, there's no sense in going over that again.
Frank, you're just unreasonable.
Come get in. Before you know it, you'll catch cold. I gave George a piece of my mind tonight. I reckon you'll have your wood shop for a while anyway. No, get up.
You know, Frank, Mrs. Fairchild always locks her front doors at night. All those people up in that part of town do.
That's the trouble with them. They're all getting citified. They have nothing fit to burgle, and everybody knows it.
Get out, Rebecca. There's only room for one at this window.
Well, let me look just a minute.
Use your own window.
I did, but there's no moon there, George. Well, you know what I think, George? I think maybe the moon's getting nearer and nearer, and soon there will be a big explosion.
Rebecca, you don't know anything. If the moon were getting nearer, the guys that set it with telescopes all night would see it first. And it'd be in all the papers.
George, is the moon shining on Canada and South America and half the whole world?
Well, probably is.
"9:30. Most of the lights are out. No, there's Constable Warren trying a few doors on Main Street. And here comes Editor Webb after putting his newspaper to bed.
Ah, good evening, Betty.
Evening, Mr. Webb.
Quite a moon.
Yeah.
All quiet tonight?
Well, Simon Stimson's been rolling around a little. Just saw his wife moving out to hunt for him, so I looked the other way. There he is now.
Good evening, Simon. Town seems to have settled down for the night pretty well. Town seems to have settled, yes. Guess we'd better do the same. Can I walk a long ways with you?
I don't know how that'll end, Mr. Webb.
Well, you've seen a peck of trouble with one thing after another. Oh, Betty, if you see my boy smoking cigarettes, just give him a word, will you? Thanks a lot of you, Betty.
Oh, I don't think he's smoking no cigarettes, Mr. Webb. Leastways not more than 2 or 3 a year.
I hope not. Well, good night, Betty.
Night, Mr. Webb.
Who's that up there? Is that you, Myrtle?
No, it's me, Papa.
Why aren't you in bed?
I don't know. I just can't sleep yet, Papa. The moonlight's so wonderful. And the smell of Mrs. Gibbs's heliotrope, can you smell it?
Yes. Haven't any troubles on your mind, have you, Emily?
Troubles, Papa? No.
Well, enjoy yourself. Don't let your mother catch you. Good night, Emily.
Good night, Papa.
I never told you about that letter Jane Crawford got from her minister when she was sick. He wrote Jane a letter, and on the envelope, the address was like this. It said, Jane Crawford, Crawford Farms, Grover's Corner, Sutton County, New Hampshire, United States of America.
Well, what's so funny about that?
Well, listen, I'm not finished. United States of America, continent of North America, Western Hemisphere, the Earth, the solar system, the universe, the mind of God. That's what it said on the envelope.
What do you know?
And the postman brought it just the same.
What do you know?
Well, folks, 3 years have gone by. Yes, the sun's come up over 1,000 times. Summers and winters have cracked the mountain a little bit more, and the rain has brought down some of the dirt. Some babies that weren't even born yet have begun talking regular sentences already. And a number of people who thought they were right young and spry have found that they can't quite bound up a flight of stairs like they used to, without their heart fluttering a little. All that can happen in 1,000 days. Nature's been pushing and contriving in other ways, too. A number of young people fell in love and got married. Yes, the mountain got bit away a few fractions of an inch. Millions of gallons of water went by the mill. And here and there, a new home was set up under a roof. Most everybody in the world gets married. You know what I mean? In our town, there aren't hardly any exceptions. Most everybody in the world climbs into their graves married. The first part was called a daily life. This part is called love and marriage. There's another part coming after this. I reckon you can guess what that's about. So, 3 years have gone by. It's 1904. It's July 7th, just after high school commencement. That's the time when most of our young people jump up and get married. Soon as they've passed their last examinations in solid geometry and Cicero's orations, it looks like they find themselves fit to be married. It's early morning. Only this time, it's been raining. It's been pouring and thundering. Mrs. Gibbs' garden here and Mrs. Webb's, drenched. All those bean poles and pea vines, drenched. All yesterday on Main Street, the rain looked like curtains being blown along. You can hear the 5:45 for Boston. And here's Mrs. Gibbs and Mrs. Webb come down to make breakfast just as though it were an ordinary day. I don't have to point out to the women in my audience that those ladies they see before them, both of those ladies, have cooked 3 meals a day, one of them for 20 years, the other for 40, and no summer vacation. They brought up 2 children apiece, washed, cleaned the house, and never a nervous breakdown. It's like what one of those Middle West poets said. You've got to have life to love life, and you've got to love life to have life. It's what you call a vicious circle. Thank God. Get up, Bessie. Here comes Hattie Newsom, delivering the milk. And there's Cy Crowell, delivering the paper like his brother before him.
Morning, Hattie.
Morning, Cy. Anything in the papers I ought to know?
Nothing much. Said we're losing about the best baseball player Grover's Corner ever had, George Gibbs.
Reckon he is.
Yeah, he could hit and run bases too.
Yep, mighty fine ball player. Whoa, Bessie, guess I can stop and talk if I have a mind to.
I don't see how he could give up a thing like that just to get married. Would you, Hattie?
Can't tell, Cy. Never had no talent that way. You're up early, Betty.
Seeing if there's anything I can do to prevent a flood. River's been raising all night.
Cy Crowell's all worked up here about George Gibbs is retiring from baseball.
Yes, ma'am, that's the way it goes. Back in '84 we had a player. Saw even George Gibbs couldn't touch him. Name of Hank Todd. Went down to Maine to become a parson. Wonderful ball player. Howdy, how does the weather look to you?
Oh, it ain't bad. I think maybe it'll clear up for good.
Good morning, Hattie. You think it's gonna rain again?
Morning, Mrs. Gibbs. It rained so heavy I think maybe it'll clear up. How much did you want today?
Well, I'm gonna have a house full of relations, Hattie. Looks to me I'll need 2 cream and 3 of milk.
My husband says to tell you that we both hope they'll be very happy, Mrs. Gibbs. We know they will.
Well, tell your husband I hope he gets there to the wedding.
Yes, he'll be there. He'll be there if he can. Morning, Mrs. Webb.
Good morning, Miss Newsom. I told you 4 quarts of milk, but I hope you can spare me another.
Yes, 2 of cream.
Will it start raining again, Miss Newsom?
Oh, I was just saying to Mrs. Gibbs as to how it may lighten up. Mr. Newsom tells me to tell you that we both hope they'll be very happy, Mrs. Webb. We know they will.
Well, thank you, and thank Mr. Newsom. We're counting on seeing you at the wedding.
Yes, we'll be there. We'll be there if we can. We couldn't miss that. Come on, Bessie.
Well, Ma, the day has come. You're losing one of your chicks.
Frank Gibbs, don't you say another word. Feel like crying every minute.
The groom's up shaving himself, only there ain't an awful lot to shave. whistling and singing like he's glad to leave us. Every now and then he turns to the mirror and says, "I do, but it don't sound very convincing to me."
I declare, Frank, I don't know how they'll get along. I've arranged his clothes, seen to it he's put warm things on. Frank, they're too young. Emily won't think of such things. He'll catch his death of cold within a week.
I was just remembering my wedding morning, Julia.
I'll go along with you.
I was the scaredest young fella in the state of New Hampshire. I thought I'd make a mistake for sure. And then I saw you coming down that aisle, and you were the prettiest girl I'd ever seen. The only trouble was I'd never seen you before.
And how do you think I felt? Weddings are perfectly awful things, Frank. Farces, that's what they are. Here, I've made you something.
Why, Julia Hersey, French toast.
It ain't hard to make, and I had to do something.
How'd you sleep last night, Julia?
Well, I heard a lot of the hours struck off.
Yes, I get a shock every time I think of George setting out to be a family man, the great gangling thing. I tell you, Julia, the relation of a father and a son is the darndest awkward.
Well, mother and daughter ain't no picnic, let me tell you.
Well, they'll have their troubles, I suppose, but everyone has a right to their own troubles.
Yep, supposed to go through life two by two. It ain't natural to be lonesome.
Do you know what I was scared of when I married you?
Oh, hush up with you.
I was scared we wouldn't have material for conversation more than lasts us a few weeks. Well, you and I have been conversing for 20 years without any noticeable barren spells.
Well, good weather, bad weather. It ain't fair choice, but I always find something to say. Did you hear Rebecca stirring around upstairs?
She's hiding in her room. Only day of the year she isn't managing everybody's business up there. I got the impression she's crying.
Lord's sake, this has got to stop. Rebecca, come and get your breakfast.
Good morning, everybody. Only 5 more hours to live.
George Gibbs, where do you think you're going?
I'm just stepping across the grass to see my girl.
Now, George, you put on your overshoes. It's raining torrents out there.
Oh, Ma, it's just a step.
George, you'll catch your death of cold and cough all through the service.
George, listen to your mother.
From tomorrow on, you can kill yourself in all weathers, but while you're in my house, you'll live wisely, thank you. Maybe Mrs. Webb isn't used to callers at 7 in the morning. Take a cup of coffee first.
Thanks. Morning, Mother Webb.
Goodness, George, you frightened me. I can let you in a minute out of the wet, but you know I can't ask you in.
Well, why not?
George, you know as well as I do, the groom can't see his bride on the wedding day, not till he sees her in church.
Aw, that's just superstition. Good morning, Mr. Webb.
Oh, good morning, George.
Mr. Webb, what sense could there be in some superstition like that one?
There's a lot of common sense in some superstitions, George.
Millions have followed it, George. You don't want to be the first to fly in the face of custom.
How's Emily?
She hasn't waked up yet. Haven't heard a sound out of her.
Emily's asleep?
No wonder. We were up till all hours, sewing and packing. Now I'll tell you what I'll do. You sit down here a minute with Mr. Webb and drink this cup of coffee. I'll go upstairs and make sure she doesn't come down and surprise you. There's some bacon too, but don't be long about it.
Well, George, how are you?
I'm fine, Mr. Webb. Mr. Webb, what sense could there be in some superstition like that one?
Well, you see, on her wedding morning, a girl's head have to be full of clothes and one thing and another. Don't you think that's probably it?
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that before.
A girl have to be a mite nervous on her wedding day.
I wish a fella could get married without all that marching up and down.
Every man that's ever lived has felt that way about it, George. But it hasn't been any use. It's the women folk who've built up the weddings, my boy. And for a while now, they have it all their own. Man looks pretty small at a wedding, George, with all those good women standing shoulder to shoulder, making sure that the knot's tied in a mighty public way.
But you believe in it, don't you, Mr. Webb?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Don't you misunderstand me, my boy. Marriage is a wonderful thing. Wonderful thing. And don't you forget that, George.
No, sir. Mr. Webb, how old were you when you got married?
Oh, well, you see, I'd taken some time to get settled, and Mrs. Webb, she wasn't much older than what Emily is. Oh, age hasn't much to do with it, George. Not compared with, other things.
What were you gonna say, Mr. Webb?
Oh, I don't know. Was I gonna say something? George, I want to give you some advice my father gave me when I got married. Charles, he said, Charles, start off by showing who's boss. Best thing to do is to give an order, even if it don't make any sense. She'll just learn to obey. And if anything about your wife irritates you, her conversation and her attitude towards you, just get up and leave the house. That'll make it clear to her, he said. Oh, and oh yes, never, never let your wife know how much money you have. Never.
Well, Mr. Webb, I don't
So
think
I took
could.
the opposite of my father's advice, and I've been happy ever since. And let that be a lesson to you, George. Never to ask advice on personal matters. George, are you going to raise chickens on your farm?
What?
Are you going to raise chickens on your farm?
Well, you see, Uncle Luke's never been much interested, but I've been
A book
thinking...
came into my office the other day on the philo system of raising chickens, and you ought to read it. You know, I'm thinking of beginning in a small way in the backyard and putting an incubator in the cellar. and
Charles, are you talking about the old incubator again? I thought you two be talking about something worthwhile.
Well, Myrtle, if you want to give the boy some good advice, I'll go upstairs and leave you alone with him.
George, Emily's got to come downstairs and eat her breakfast. She sends you her love, but she doesn't want to lay eyes on you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
You know, Myrtle, I guess you don't know about that other superstition, do you?
What do you mean, Charles?
Well, since the caveman, no bridegroom should see his father-in-law on the wedding day nor near it. Now remember that.
Thank you, Mrs. Webb. Thank you, Mr. Webb. Now, I'll have to interrupt again here. You see, we want to know how all this began, this wedding, this plan to spend a lifetime together. I'm awfully interested in how big things like that begin. You know how it is, you're 21 or 22, and you make some decisions, and wish, you're 70. You've been a lawyer for 50 years, and that white-haired lady at your side has eaten over 50,000 meals with you. How do such things begin? Emily and George are going to show you now the conversation they had when they first knew that as the saying goes, they were meant for one another. But before they do, I want you all to try and remember what it was like to have been very young. And particularly, the days when you were first in love. When you were like a person sleepwalking. And you didn't quite see the street you were in. And you didn't quite hear what was said to you. You're just a little bit crazy. Will you remember that for me, please? Now, they'll be coming out of high school at 3 o'clock. George has just been elected president of the junior class. And as it's June, that means he'll be president of the senior class all next year. And Emily's just been elected secretary and treasurer. I don't have to tell you how important that is. Yep, there they are, coming down Main Street now.
I can't, Lois. I've got to go home. Oh, Ernestine. Ernestine, can you come by later to do Latin? Isn't that Cicero just the worst? Tell your mother you have to. Goodbye. Goodbye, Helen. Goodbye, Fred.
Hello, Emily. Can I carry your books home for you?
Why, thank you. It isn't far.
I'm awful glad you were elected as well, Emily.
Thank you.
Emily, why are you mad at me?
I'm not mad at you.
Well, you've been treating me so funny lately.
Well, George, since you ask, I might as well say it right out. George, goodbye, Miss Corcoran.
Goodbye, Miss Corcoran. What is it, Emily?
George, I don't like the whole change that's come over you in the past year. I'm sorry if this hurts your feelings, but I've got to tell the truth and shame the devil.
A change? What do you mean?
Well, up to a year ago, I used to like you a lot. And I used to watch you as you did everything because we'd been friends for so long. But then you began spending all your time at baseball, and you suddenly didn't speak to anybody anymore. George, you didn't even speak to your own family. And George, it's a fact you got awful conceited and stuck up, and all the girls say so. They may not say it to your face, but that's exactly what they say about you behind your back. And it hurts me to hear them say it, although I have to agree with them a little. I'm sorry if this hurts your feelings, but I can't be sorry that I said it.
Emily, I never thought such a thing was happening to me. I guess it's hard for a fellow not to have a few faults creep into his character.
I always expect a man to be perfect, and I think he should be.
Oh, but I don't think it's possible to be perfect, Emily.
Well, my father is, and as far as I can see, your father is. Well, George, there's no reason why on earth you shouldn't be too.
Well, I feel that it's the other way around, that men aren't naturally good, but girls are.
Well, George, you might as well know right now that I'm not perfect. George, it's not as easy for a girl to be as perfect as a man because we girls are more nervous. Oh, no, I'm sorry I said all that about you. I don't know what made me say it.
Emily.
Now I can see that it isn't the truth at all, and I suddenly feel as though it isn't important anyway.
Emily, would you like to get an ice cream soda or something before you go home?
Well, thank you. I would.
Hello, Stu. Good afternoon, Mrs. Slocum.
Hello, George. Hello, Emily. What do you have? Emily Webb, what you been crying about?
Oh, she just got an awful scare, Mr. Morgan. She almost got run over by that hardware store wagon. Everyone says Tom Huggis drives like a crazy person.
Well, you take a drink of water, Emily. You look all shook up. I tell you, you gotta look both ways before crossing Main Street these days. Gets worse every year. What do you have?
I'll have a strawberry phosphate. Thank you, Mr. Morgan.
No, Emily, have an ice cream soda with me. 2 strawberry ice cream sodas,
2
Mr. Morgan.
strawberry ice cream sodas. Yes, sir, yes, sir. There are 125 horses in Grover's Corners this minute I'm talking to you. State inspector was in here yesterday, and now they're bringing in these automobiles. I tell you, the best thing to do is just stay home. Why, I remember when a doc could go to sleep all day in the middle of Main Street, and nothing come along to disturb him. There they are. Enjoy them. Yes, Mrs. Ellis, what can I do for you?
They're so expensive.
No, don't you think of that. We're celebrating our election. And do you know what else I'm celebrating, Emily?
No?
I'm celebrating because I've got a friend who tells me all the things that ought to be told to me.
George, please don't think of that. I don't know why I said it. It's not true. You're...
Emily, you stick to it. But you'll see. I'm going to change so quick. And Emily, can I ask you a favor?
What?
Emily, if I do go away to state agriculture school next year, would you write me a letter every once in a while?
I certainly will. I certainly will, George. It seems being away 3 years, you'd get out of touch with things. Well, maybe letters from Grover's Corners wouldn't be so interesting after a while. Grover's Corners isn't a very interesting place when you think of all New Hampshire. But I think it's a very nice town.
Emily, the day wouldn't come when I wouldn't want to know everything that's going on here. I know that's true, Emily.
Well, I'll try to make my letters interesting then.
You know, Emily, whenever I meet a farmer, I always make it a point to ask them if they think it's important to go to agriculture school to be a good farmer. And most of them end up telling me that it's even a waste of time.
Why, George?
You can get all that stuff anyway, out of the pamphlets the government sends out. And, well, Uncle Luke's getting old. He's about ready for me to take over his farm, well, tomorrow if I could.
My.
And it's like you say, Emily, being gone in other places and meeting other people, well, if anything like that can happen, I don't want to go away, Emily. I guess new people aren't any better than old ones. I'd bet they almost never are. Emily, I feel that you're as good a friend as I've got. I don't need to go and meet the other people in other towns.
But, George, maybe it's very important for you to go and learn all about that cattle judging and soils and those things. Of course, I don't know.
Emily, I'm going to make up my mind right now. I won't go. I'll tell Pa about it tonight.
Why, George, I don't see why you have to decide right now. It's a whole year away.
Emily, listen. I'm glad that you spoke to me about that fault in my character. And what you said was right. But there was one thing wrong in it. And that was when you said that I wasn't noticing people. And you, for instance. Why, you said that you were watching me when I did everything. Why, I was doing the same about you all this time. Why, sure, I always thought of you as one of the chief people I thought about. I always made sure where you were sitting on the bleachers and who you were with. And for 3 days now, I've been trying to walk home with you, but something always got in the way. Yesterday, I was standing over against the wall, and you walked home with Miss Corcoran.
George, life's awful funny. How could I have known that? Why, I thought...
Listen, Emily. I'm going to tell you why I'm not going to agriculture school. I think that once you found someone who you're fond of and who's fond of you and, you know, enough to be interested in your character, well, I think that's just as important as college is.
I think it's awfully important, too.
Emily, if I make a big change, and I mean a really big change, would you be, could you be?
I am now. I always have been.
So, I guess this is an important talk we've been having.
Yes. Yes.
Wait 1 minute and I'll walk you home. Mr. Morgan, I'll have to go home to get the money to pay you for this.
George Gibbs, do you mean to tell me?
Yes, but it was important, okay? Here, take my gold watch.
You keep your watch, George. I'll trust you.
I'll be back in 5 minutes.
I'll trust you 10 years, George, not a day over. Gotta love your shock, Emily.
Why, yes, Mr. Morgan, thank you. It was nothing.
I'm ready.
That's the end of the first act, friends. 10 minutes intermission. Well, now we're ready to get on with the wedding. There are a lot of things to be said about a wedding. There are a lot of thoughts that go on during a wedding. We can't fit them all into one wedding naturally, and especially not one in Grover's Corners, where they're awfully plain and short. In this wedding, I play the minister. That gives me the right to say a few more things about it. For a while now, the play gets pretty serious. You see, some churches say that marriage is a sacrament, I don't quite know what that means, but I can guess. It's like what Mrs. Gibbs said a few minutes ago. People are meant to go through life 2 by 2. This is a good wedding. But people are so put together that even at a good wedding, there's a lot of confusion way down deep in people's minds. And we thought that ought to be in our wedding too. The real hero of this scene isn't on the stage at all. And you know who that is. It's like what one of those European fellas said. Every child born into the world is nature's attempt at a perfect human being. Well, we've seen nature pushing and contriving for some time now. We all know that nature's interested in quantity, but I think she's interested in quality too. That's why I'm in the ministry. And don't forget all the other witnesses at this wedding. The ancestors. Millions of them. Most of them set out to live 2 by 2 also. Millions of them. Well, that's on my sermon. It wasn't very long anyway.
I don't know why on earth I should be crying. I suppose there's nothing to cry about. It came over me at breakfast this morning. There was Emily eating her breakfast as she's done for 17 years. And now she's going off to eat it at somebody else's house. I suppose that's it. Oh, and then all of a sudden she said, "I can't eat another mouthful." And then she put her head down on the table and she cried. You know, I've got to say it. There's something downright cruel about sending our girls into marriage this way. I hope one of her girlfriends has told her a thing or two. It's cruel, I know, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything. I went into it blind as a bat myself. The whole world's wrong. That's the matter. Here they come.
All right, that'll do. That's enough of that.
Oh, thank you.
There used to be an awful lot of that kind of thing back in the old days. Rome and later. We're more civilized now. So they say.
I'm in pain. My fear. Idiot. George, what's the matter?
Ma, I don't want to grow old. Why is everybody pushing me so?
Why, George, you wanted it.
No, Ma, just listen to me.
No, George, you're a man now.
Ma, for the last time, all I want is to be a fella.
George, if anyone should hear you. Now stop. I'm ashamed of you.
What? Where's Emily?
George, you gave me such a turn.
Cheer up, Ma. I'm getting married.
Let me catch my breath a minute.
Now, Ma, you save Thursday nights. Me and Emily, we're going to come over every Thursday night. Come on. We got to get ready for this.
I never felt so alone in my entire life. And George over there looking so... Oh, I hate him. I wish I were dead. Papa!
Emily, you're fine. You're all right.
But Papa,
You're all right.
I don't want to get married.
No, Emily, you're just nervous, that's all.
Well, why can't I just stay a little while as I am? Oh, let's go away.
No, Emily, now stop and think a minute.
Well, there must be lots of places we could go. I could work for you. I could keep house.
No. George, will you come here a minute? Why, you're marrying the best young fellow in the world. George is a fine fellow.
But Papa...
George, I'm handing my daughter to you. Do you think you could take care of her?
I want to try, Mr. Webb. Emily, I love you. Emily, I need you.
Well, if you love me, help me. All I want is for someone to love me.
I will, Emily. Emily, I'll try.
And I mean forever, do you hear? Forever and ever.
Come, they're waiting for us.
Do you, George?
Perfectly
this woman,
lovely
Emily,
wedding.
to be your lawful
Loveliest wedding I ever saw. Oh, I do love a good wedding. Don't you? Doesn't she
do.
make a lovely bride?
Do you, Emily? Take this man, George.
Don't know when I've seen such a lovely wedding, but I always cry. Don't know why it is, but I always cry.
I do.
I just like to see young people happy. Don't you? I think it's lovely.
You may kiss the bride. I've married over 200 couples in my day. Do I believe in it? I don't know. Anne marries Anne, millions of them. The cottage, the go-kart, the Sunday afternoon drives in the fall, the first rheumatism, the grandchildren, the second rheumatism, the deathbed, the reading of the will. Once in 1,000 times. Interesting.
Aren't they a lovely couple? Oh, I don't know when I've been to such a beautiful wedding. I'm sure they'll be happy. I always say happiness. That's the great thing. The important thing is to be happy.
Nine years have gone by, friends. Summer, 1913. Gradual changes in Grover's Corners. Horses are getting rarer. Farmers are coming into town in Fords. Everybody locks their house doors now at night. Ain't been any burglars in town, but everybody's heard about them. You'd be surprised, though. On the whole, things don't change much around here. This is certainly an important part of Grover's Corners. It's on a hilltop, a windy hilltop. Lots of sky, lots of clouds. Often lots of sun and moon and stars. You come up here on a fine afternoon and you can see range on range of hills. Up there by Lake Sunapee and Lake Winnipesaukee. Awful blue they are. And way up, if you've got a glass, you can see the White Mountains and Mount Washington, where North Conway and Conway is. And of course, our favorite mountain, Mount Monadnock's right here, and all the towns that lie around it. Jaffrey and East Jaffrey, and Peterborough and Dublin. And over there, quite a ways down, is Grover's Corners. Beautiful spot up here. Mountain laurel and lilacs. I often wonder why people like to be buried in Brooklyn or Woodlawn when they might pass the same time up here in New Hampshire. Over here are the old stones, 1670, 1680. Strong-minded people that come a long way to be independent. Summer people walk around there laughing at the funny words on the tombstones. They don't do any harm. And genealogists come up from Boston, get paid by city people for looking up ancestors. Want to know if they're daughters of the Mayflower and the American Revolution. I guess that don't do any harm either. Wherever you come near the human race, there's layers and layers of nonsense. Over here are some Civil War veterans. Iron flags on their graves. New Hampshire boys. Had a notion that the Union ought to be kept together, though they'd never seen more than 50 miles of it themselves. All they knew was the name, friends. The United States of America. The United States of America. And they went and died about it. Over here's the new part of the cemetery. Here's your friend, Mrs. Gibbs, and Mr. Stimson, who is organist at the Congregational Church. And Mrs. Soames. Enjoyed the wedding so. You remember? And a lot of others. Editor Webb's boy, Wallace, whose appendix burst on a Boy Scout trip to Crawford Notch. Yes, an awful lot of sorrow has sort of quieted down up here. People just wild with grief have brought their relatives up to this hill. We all know how it is. And then time, and sunny days, and rainy days, and snow. We're all glad they're in a beautiful place, and that we're coming up here when our fit's over too. Now, there are some things we all know, but we don't take them out and look at them very often. We all know that something is eternal. And it ain't houses, and it ain't names, and it ain't the earth, and it ain't even the stars. Everybody knows in their bones that something is eternal. And that something has to do with human beings. All the greatest people ever lived have been telling us that for 5,000 years. And yet you'd be surprised that people are always losing hold of it. There's something way deep down that's eternal about every human being. You and I know that the dead don't stay interested in us living people for very long. Gradually they lose hold of the earth, and the ambitions they had, and the pleasures they had, and the things they suffered, and the people they loved. They get weaned away from earth. That's the way I put it. Weaned away. And they stay here while the earth parts of them burn out, burn away. And in all that time, they slowly get indifferent to what's going on in Grover's Corners. They're waiting. They're waiting for something they feel is coming. Something important and great. Aren't they waiting for that eternal part in them to come out clear? Some of the things they're going to say, maybe they hurt your feelings. But that's the way it is. Mother and daughter, husband and wife, enemy and enemy, money and miser. All those terribly important things. Kind of go pale around here. And what's left? When memory's gone, and your identity. Well, there are some living people in Grover's Corners. There's Josephine Stoddard, our undertaker, supervising a new-made grave. And here comes a Grover's Corners gal, who left town to go out west.
Good afternoon, Joe Stoddard. Good afternoon, good afternoon. Let me see now. Do I know you?
I'm Samantha Craig.
Gracious sakes alive, of all people. I should have known you'd be back for the funeral. You've been away a long time, Samantha.
Yes, I've been away over 12 years now. I run a business out in Buffalo now, Joe. But when I got wind of my cousin's death, I was in the East, so I combined a few things, and you look well.
Yes, very sad our journey today.
Yes.
Yes, yes, can't complain. I always say I hate to supervise when a young person is taken. They'll be here in a few minutes now. I had to come early today. My son is supervising at the home.
Why? That's old Farmer McCarty. I did chores for him after school. He had lumbago?
Yes. We brought Farmer McCarty here a number of years ago.
This is my Aunt Julia. I'd forgotten that she'd... Of course.
Doc Gibbs lost his wife 2-3 years ago. Today's another pretty bad blow for him, too.
That's my sister Carrie's girl, Samantha. Samantha Craig.
I'm always uncomfortable when they're around.
Simon.
Do they choose their own verses much, Joe?
No, not usual. Mostly the bereaved pick a verse.
It doesn't sound like my Aunt Julia. There aren't many of those Hersey sisters left now. Now let me see. I wanted to find my father and mother's.
Over there with the Craigs, Avenue F.
He was the organist at the church. Drank a lot, we used to say.
Nobody was supposed to know about it. He'd seen a peck of trouble. Took his own life, you know.
Oh, did he?
Yes. They tried to hush it up, but of course it got around. He chose his own epitaph. You can see it there. It ain't a verse exactly.
Why? It's just some music notes. What is it?
Oh, I wouldn't know. It was written up in the Boston papers at the time.
Joe, how did she die?
Who?
My cousin?
Oh, didn't you know? Had some trouble bringing a baby into the world. 'Twas her second, though. There's a little boy, about 4 years old.
And her grave's gonna be over there?
Yes. There ain't much more room here among the Gibbses, so they're opening up a whole new section over by Avenue A. You'll excuse me now. I see they're coming. Who is it, Julia?
My daughter-in-law, Emily. Emily Webb.
Well, I declare, the road up here must have been awful muddy. What did she die of, Julia?
In childbirth.
Childbirth. I'd forgotten all about that. My, wasn't life awful and wonderful?
Wonderful, was it?
Simon, remember.
I remember Emily's wedding. Wasn't it a lovely wedding? And I remember her reading the class poem at the graduation exercises. Emily was one of the brightest girls ever graduated from high school. I heard Principal Wilkins say so time and time again. I called upon them at their new farm just before I died. Perfectly beautiful farm.
It's on the same road we lived on.
Yep. Right, smart farm.
I always liked that hymn. I was hoping they'd sing a hymn.
Hello. Hello, Emily.
Hello, Mother Gibbs.
Emily?
Hello. It's raining.
Yes. Rest now, dear. They'll be gone soon.
Oh, it seems thousands and thousands of years ago since I... Oh, Papa remembered that was my favorite hymn. Oh, I wish I'd been there a long time. I don't like being new here. Oh, how do you do, Mr. Stimson?
How you do, Emily?
Mother Gibbs, George and I have turned that farm into just the best place you ever saw. We thought of you all the time. We wanted to show you the new barn and the new cement drinking fountain for the stock. We bought it with the money you left us.
I did?
Yes, Mother Gibbs, don't you remember the legacy that you left for us? Why, it was over $350.
Yes. Yes, Emily.
Well, there's a patent device on the drinking fountain so that it never overflows and it never sinks below a certain level. It's fine. It won't be the same to George without me, but it's a lovely farm. Live people don't understand, do they?
No, dear. Not very much.
They're sort of shut up in little boxes. I feel as though I knew them last 1,000 years ago. My boy is spending the day at Mr. Carter's. Oh, Mr. Carter, my boy is spending the day at your house. Yes. Oh, he loves it there. Mother Gibbs, we have a Ford too. Never gives us any trouble. I don't drive, though. Mother Gibbs, when does this feeling go away? Of being one of them, how long does it?
Just rest and be patient.
I know. Oh, look. They're finished. They're going. Look. Oh, Father Gibbs is bringing some of my flowers to you. Oh, he looks just like George, doesn't he? Oh, Mother Gibbs, I never realized how troubled and how in the dark life persons are. Oh, I loved him so. From morning till night, that's all they are. Troubled.
Little cooler than it was.
Yes, that rain's cooled it off a little. Those northeast winds always do the same thing, don't they? It isn't a rain, it's 3-day blow.
But, Mother Gibbs, one can go back back into living. I feel it, I know it. Just then for a moment I was thinking of the farm. Oh, my baby was on my lap as plain as day.
Yes, of course you can.
Well, one can go back, why not?
All I can say is, Emily, don't.
But it's true, isn't it? One can go back there into living again.
Yes, some have tried. They soon come back here.
Well, I won't choose to live over a sad day. I'll choose a happy one anyway. Oh, I'll choose the day that I first knew that I loved George. Why should that be painful?
You not only live it, you see yourself living it.
Yes?
And as you watch, you see the thing that they, down there, never see. You see the future. You know what's going to happen.
But is that painful? Why?
That's not the only reason you shouldn't do it, Emily. When you've been here longer, you'll understand that our life here is to forget all that and think only of what's ahead and be ready for what's ahead. When you've been here longer, you'll understand.
But Mother Gibbs, how can I ever forget that life? It's all that I knew. It's all that I had.
Oh, Emily, it's not wise, really. It isn't.
But it's a thing I must know for myself. I'll choose a happy day anyway.
No. At least choose an unimportant day. Choose the least important day of your life. It'll be important enough.
Oh. Well, then it can't be since I was married. Or since the baby was born. I can choose a birthday, though, can't I? I choose my 12th birthday.
All right. February 11th, 1899. A Tuesday. On a special time of day?
Oh, I want the whole day.
We'll begin at dawn. You remember it had been snowing for several days, but it stopped the night before, and they'd begun clearing the roads. Sun's coming up.
Oh, there's a Main Street. Oh, and Mr. Morgan's drugstore before he changed it. And the livery stable.
Yes, it's 1899. This is 14 years ago.
This is the town I knew as a little girl. Oh, and there's the white fence that used to be around our house. Oh, I'd forgotten that. Oh, I loved it so. Are they inside?
Yes. Your mother will be coming down to make breakfast any minute.
Will she?
And you remember, your father had been away for several days. He came back on the early morning train.
No?
He went out to make a speech at his college in Western New York, at Clinton.
Oh, there's Hattie Newsom. Oh, and her constable. But she's dead. She died.
Whoa, Bessie. Morning, Betty. Morning, Hattie. You're up early.
Been rescuing a party darn near froze to death down by Polish Town there. Got drunk and laid out in the snowdrifts. Thought he was in bed when I shook him.
Hey, there's Joe Crowell.
Good morning, Miss Warren. Good morning, Hattie.
Children, Wally, Emily, time to get up.
Oh, Mama. Oh, I didn't know Mama was ever that young.
You can come and dress by the fire if you'd like, but hurry. Good morning, Miss Newsom. Oh, it's cold.
10 below by my barn, Mrs. Webb.
Think of it, keep yourself wrapped up.
Mama, I can't find my blue hair ribbon anywhere.
Just open your eyes, dear. I laid it out for you special there on the dresser. If it were a snake, it'd bite you.
Yes.
Good morning, Betty.
Morning, Mr. Webb. You're up early.
Yes, just been back from my whole college in New York State. Been any trouble here?
Well, I was called up this morning to rescue a Polish fella. Darn near froze to death he was.
Oh, I must get it in the paper.
It wasn't much.
Papa.
Good morning, Myrtle.
How'd it go, Charles?
Oh, fine. I told him a few things. Everything going okay here?
Yes, can't think of anything that's happened special. Been right cold. Hattie Newsom says it's been 10 below over at her barn.
Yes, well, it's colder than at Hamilton College. Students' ears are falling off. It ain't Christian.
Oh, Charles, it's Emily's birthday. Did you remember to get her something?
Yes, I've got something for her. Where's my girl? Where's my birthday girl?
Don't interrupt her now, Charles. She's slow enough as it is. You can see her at breakfast. Come on, children, come downstairs. Now, I don't want to call you again.
I can't bear it. They're so young and beautiful. Why did they ever have to get old? Mama, I'm here. I love you all, everything. Oh, I can't look at everything hard enough. Good morning, Mama.
Well, a very happy birthday to my birthday girl, and many happy returns. There's some surprises waiting for you on the kitchen table.
Oh, Mama, you shouldn't have. I can't.
But birthday or no birthday, I want you to eat your breakfast good and slow. Want you to grow up to be a good, strong girl. That in the blue is from your Aunt Carrie. I reckon you can guess who brought the postcard album. George Gibbs. Must have come over pretty early in the cold. Right nice of him.
Oh, George. Oh, I'd forgotten that.
Chew that bacon good and slow. Keep you warm on a cold day.
Oh, Mama, just look at me one moment as though you really saw me. Mama. 14 years have gone by, Mama. I'm dead, Mama. You're a grandmother. I married George Gibbs. Mama, Wally's dead too. His appendix burst on a camping trip to North Conway, and we all just felt terrible about it. But Mama, just for a moment, we're here and we're together. Just for a moment, we're happy. Let's look at one another.
That in the yellow is something I found in the attic among your grandmother's things. You're old enough to have it now, and I thought you'd like it.
Oh, Mama, it's beautiful, and it's just what I wanted.
Well, I'm glad you'd like it. Your Aunt Nora couldn't find one in Concord, so I had to send all the way up to Boston. Wally has something for you, too. He made it in manual training class, and he's right proud of it. Make sure and make a big fuss. Your father has something for you as well. Don't know what it is myself. Shh, here he comes.
Where's my girl? Where's my birthday girl?
I can't. It all goes by so quickly. We don't even have time to look at one another. Take me back, up the hill to my grave. Oh, but first. Goodbye, world. Goodbye, Grover's Corners. Goodbye to Mama and Papa. Goodbye to clocks ticking and Mama's sunflowers. Goodbye to food and coffee. Goodbye to hot baths and new iron dresses. Goodbye to sleeping and waking up. Oh, Earth, you're too wonderful for anybody to realize you. Do any human beings ever realize life as they live it? Every minute?
No. The saints and poets, maybe. They do some.
I'm ready.
Were you happy?
No. I should have listened to them. That's all human beings are, just blind people.
It's clearing up. The stars are coming out.
Oh, Mr. Stimson, I should have listened to them.
Yes. Yes, now you know. Now you know. That's the happy life you wanted to go back to. To trample on the feelings of those about you. To spend and waste time as though you had a million years. To always be at the mercy of one self-centered passion or another. That's the existence you wanted to go back to. Ignorance and blindness.
Simon Stimson, that ain't the whole truth and you know it. Emily, look at that star. I forget its name.
My boy Joel was a sailor. Knew 'em all. He'd step back on the porch evenings and tell 'em by name. Yes, sir, wonderful.
A star's mighty great company.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Here's one of them coming.
That's funny. Ain't no time for one of them to be here. Goodness sakes.
Mother Gibbs. It's George.
And my boy Joel, who knew the stars, he used to say it took millions of years for that speck of light to get to the earth. Don't seem like a body could believe it, but that's what he used to say. Millions of years.
Goodness, that ain't no way to behave.
He ought to be home.
Mother Gibbs.
Yes, Emily?
Live people don't understand, do they?
No, dear. They don't understand.
Most everybody's asleep in Grover's Corners. There are a few lights on. Shorty Hawkins down at the depot has just watched the Albany train go by. And at the livery stable, someone's setting up late and talking. It's clearing up. There are the stars, doing their old crisscross journeys in the sky. Scholars haven't settled the matter yet, but they seem to think there are no living beings up there. Just chalk or fire. Only this one's straining away. Straining away so hard to make something of itself. The strain's so bad that every 16 hours, everybody lies down and gets a rest. "11 o'clock in Grover's Corners. You get a good rest, too. Good night."